shall we?
We have quorum.
Okay. I would now like to call to order the March 25th meeting of the Downtown Design Review Board. Will the board and ex officio members please introduce themselves?
Yeah, Cameron Boland, AIA representative.
Tony Allen, Downtown Business and Development Representative.
Perry Childress, East Tennessee Community Design Center.
Rick Blackburn, Historic Zoning Commission.
Matthew DeBard-Laban, Downtown Knoxville Alliance.
Jared Worsham, Downtown Resident Representative.
Suzanne Taravella, Neighborhood Representative.
Lindsay Lenoy, Knoxville, Knox County Planning.
Dallas DeArmond, Knoxville, Knox County Planning.
Melinda Willard, Knoxville, Knox County Planning. Christine Morgan Stillery, City Law Department.
Mark Reel, City of Knoxville Plans Review and Inspection.
Thank you. The minutes of the February 19th board meeting are provided in the agenda packet. Has everybody had a chance to review those, and are there any corrections?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion?
And second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Motion carries. All right, Lindsay, do you want to do the staff report?
Sure. The administrative approval since the last meeting, there is a new sign at 503 Clinch Avenue. It's a projecting sign, non-illuminated, hanging from the existing sign arm. And that's it.
Great, thank you. All right, then we'll get started with our certificates of appropriateness. The first one is at 2136 Apricot Avenue, which is case number 2F25IH.
Okay, so this is a case that was postponed from the February meeting so that the applicant could participate. So this is a new primary structure fronting Apricot Avenue. The structure will be located 20 feet from the front property line. There's no parking included in that site plan. It is a 2-story building with a side gable roof that's 6/12 pitch, an exterior of lap siding with corner boards, and a cedar texture accent boards on the top of each story. You can see here and here. And the foundation will be clad in stucco. Each unit has a 4-foot deep front porch at the edge of the facade. And so the applicant here is using the middle housing standards. There are no other houses on the block face that will receive construction. So the building is proposed to be set 20 feet from the front property line, which is appropriate for a block with no other structures. The site plan includes a concrete walkway to the street. The guidelines for multi-unit housing recommend that new multifamily buildings be designed in scale and context with the neighborhood. The block to receive new construction has no other structures. The buildings across the street are the rears of buildings fronting Ohio Avenue. The building will lack any sort of context in this area. The duplex is proportionate to the dimensions of the lot. This is a very large, almost 83 feet wide lot. And it has consistent side setbacks. It does not incorporate details that align with the architectural context. There are design elements required by the middle housing standards. There is no parking provided on the site plan. So the duplex is proposed for a dead-end street with no turnaround. It's approximately 10 feet of pavement width. And so one of the comments in the February meeting I know was related to the engineering's input. And so engineering will require the developer to build out the road, so at least partially has frontage all the way down to lot 11, which you can see here. They are not going to enforce any sort of turnaround space unless the fire department does, and the fire department hasn't weighed in. So the road will have to be built out further. It doesn't have to necessarily be widened in any way at this time, but it will have to at least be built out to reach that full lot. Major revisions to affect the site plan may require further DRB review. The duplex is similar in facade width to houses in the neighborhood. It's 35 feet, 4 inches wide. It is taller than the surrounding context, as the block across the street is characterized by 1-story houses. The side elevations are large in scale. They attempt to break up the massing via a bay window and some changes in curved trim separating each story. It is within the maximum width and depth for the middle housing requirements. At least a 6/12 pitch roof is required by the middle housing standards. That's also kind of the minimum approved by infill guidelines. This building may vary from additional variations in roof line, particularly on these large side elevations. Guidelines recommend that the windows and doors be similar, with similar placement and ratio of solid to void. All 4 elevations do have sufficient transparency. Some revisions may be necessary to better align the windows with the historic context, particularly the irregular placement of the windows on the side elevation. The site plan should also incorporate native or naturalized shade trees in the front and rear yards, or retain any existing mature trees on that site. So staff's recommending approval of 2F2425 IH, subject to the conditions that the final site plan meets city engineering standards, the incorporation of additional design elements to meet middle housing standards, with the minor revisions to be approved by staff, revisions to the side elevation window placement, and meeting the relevant standards of 4.6 in the zoning code.
Great, thank you. Is the applicant present?
You should be on Zoom.
Can you hear us?
Josh, you can unmute yourself, please.
Are you there?
There you
Yes.
are. Hi.
Okay, yeah, I'm here.
Do you have anything to add to Lindsay's comments?
No, she did great, that's all.
Okay, great. Then we'll open it up to the board for a conversation.
I have real concerns about Apricot. This is a one-lane, one-way little stretch of pavement, no better than an alley. And it's not wide enough for on-street parking, even if you extend it at its current width. And also, the rest of that entire block belongs to Knoxville, a single infill housing group. So I'm concerned about future development on the block, that we're not considering that today. But it's something that I don't know if you are aware of. It is a group that places pre-engineered housing in infill lots around town. So the future, and of course the alley is marked on your site plan. It is not a developed alley, so the back access does not exist either. So my primary concerns are about access and parking, being able to get the vehicles up and down if you have someone coming and someone going. And many of the houses across Apricot access their garages from behind, so it's not just the 2 families being added with this structure, but the other 4 houses that use that street as access. I understand engineering is not requiring it to be widened, but I'm concerned about emergency access and exactly where the people who live here will park, even with the extended road.
Were there any neighborhood comments?
No.
I will say I think the fire marshal commented on it. He responded to my email and said that they don't need a turnaround there, but I wouldn't be opposed to adding a driveway if that makes it more suitable for you guys.
I'd like to see a widened end to the road, since they're not requiring a hammerhead or any actual cul-de-sac or anything. I would like to see at least 2 or more off-street parkings, or the road widen enough at that end to park some cars and give them the ability to turn around easily to head back out Apricot, because we don't want to push people into going backwards. And I realize initially they may park in that gravel surface lot that's off property right there until something happens there, but we can't count on that.
Yeah. Okay, I'll consider that and get with the surveyor on trying to put something together on a parking pad then.
And I would just add on the infill housing side and also the middle housing, both of the requirements are the same. You do front yard parking.
Right.
And so it would typically take the form of a driveway that extends at least 20 feet behind the front of the house, or in this case, it even could extend to the rear and have parking behind the building, if there's enough space for you to turn around back there and then enter. So I just want to put that one on the record so that it doesn't come back as a front yard parking pad.
Right.
Yeah, it can't be in front of the building. Yeah.
I'm glad to see an obscure lot like this getting housing.
Yeah.
I know that, not all the complications aside, and I'm glad that it's a duplex and not a single family house, so the increased density there. Honestly, my only concerns are really material-wise. think that the strip of the cedar band, like horizontally, is really breaking up the proportions like you're trying. I've got a clip here, but of course you guys can't see, but I was looking at the streets around it and looking at the housing and just how we differentiate the gable with shakes or different color. It doesn't even have to be a different siding type. It could just be a different color, from like the base being one color with the top, basically from the middle up, to the gable being another color. I think would be a lot more successful than the cedar wood-like strip in between it. And the other comment I had was the front elevation, just architecturally, I think is pretty terrible with those two eyebrows at the duplex, like meeting in the middle, the two gables. But also, there's going to be a downspout right down there in the middle, because that cricket or that valley of the way the roof meets is going to produce water. It's either going to be a waterfall or a downspout right down the middle. So it would really be I think, a more successful project. I know we're going to review this project twice today. If that front was just a pure gable and not double gable across that, correct, as they're motioning with the cursor, I think that would make the project a lot more successful architecturally.
Anyone else?
I'll say a quick thing. I think I agree with Cameron that the materiality could be different in the gables to add some more variation in either material or paint color. I do disagree with Cameron on the front gable. I think that a downspout, if it were painted the same color as the trim, it could be a nice way to break up that facade and make it look more like a townhouse. But to the parking concern, I am concerned about that as well, so I'd like to include that in a motion to approve per staff recommendation with the addition of the driveway.
Okay, we have a motion to approve based on staff recommendation and include provisions for a driveway.
I'd like to include the removal of the cedar strips and the differentiation in color or texture from the base to the top.
Who's making the motion?
Well, I was just gonna say, we need to, Tony, if you agree with that, I need you to restate your motion. If you don't agree, then you have to vote on yours first.
Okay, well, let me articulate it better for him to add to it. Just a study of the material differentiation for staff approval.
I agree. I think either change of the gable material or removal of the cedar and a change in paint color to, I think that can be approved through staff recommendation, right? Based on that wording.
Okay, just for clarity of getting it right, can you say it all at once?
Yes, sure. I will make a motion to approve per staff recommendation, adding the requirement for a driveway and a closer look at the materiality to either change the color or materiality of the gable ends and or removal of the cedar. What was your concern with the cedar strips?
The horizontal strips.
Just removing them?
Yes.
Or removing the cedar strips.
Is that with approval by staff as well?
Yes.
With approval by staff.
Okay.
No, hang on, oh, well, yeah, then I'll have a discussion. Go ahead. Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, we
Yeah.
have a motion and a second,
Now discussion.
if you want.
Yeah, so should it be and or? Because that kind of leaves that open-ended, and I think we're pretty positive that we wanted that out, so.
That's why I said with staff approval, if we were gonna leave it open-ended, but if you don't wanna leave it open-ended, certainly you could.
And I'm just talking about the horizontal band.
Sure, I said and or because I don't necessarily agree that the bands are detrimental to the design.
Okay, my motion, or second stands.
We have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Thank you. We'll see this again shortly. Next up is 1233 Connecticut Avenue. It's case number 2I25IH.
Okay, this case was also postponed in February. So this is a new primary structure fronting Connecticut Avenue. It will be set 31.2 feet deep from the front lot line, and the parking is a concrete pad accessed from the alley. The house is 1.5 stories with a front gable roof, an exterior fiber cement lap siding, and it has a partial width 8-foot deep front porch recessed under a hipped roof. So some of the findings here. The house is proposed to be set 31 feet from the front property line. The average front setback of the block is 25.1 feet. The adjacent house is 24, so the house should be moved towards the front property line to align with the front setback pattern of the street. The parking meets the design guidelines. The house features a half-length 8-foot deep front porch that meets the design guidelines as well. Overall, the windows match the context in terms of placement and transparency. Staff would recommend one window be added to the rear elevation, just to avoid large swaths of blank siding. This is relatively visible from the corner street. The roof is steep for the context. There are some additional complexity with the front gable massings. Staff's recommending approval of 2I25IH subject to the condition that the final site plan meets city engineering standards. The window be added to the rear elevation. The final site plan include a tree in the front and rear yards, and all elevations use the same siding material. And that note is because on the elevation drawings, they do break down fiber cement versus vinyl, and kind of the front and the sides are different. So we would recommend that.
Great, thank you. Is the applicant present?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Do you have anything to add to Lindsay's comments?
Nope, that was great, thanks.
Thank you. We're going to open it up for discussion.
Put her name and address.
Oh yeah, thank you. Can you give us your name and address, please? I forgot to ask last time.
Josh Braden, 303 Bob Smith Lane, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37924.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, now we're going to open it up to conversation. Or a motion.
I've got some comments. I was just not going to talk over it initially. I like that it's using the alley, and it's an interesting side lot, so it's good to see a house going there. What is the material for the screen porch on the back? Or is it a screen porch on the back? That's what we're seeing in the rear elevation.
Yes, I would like to actually remove that and just have it open. But the material I think we have in there is just just wood post. I'm not sure if that's exactly what you're asking, but wood post with just screening attached to it.
Right. I guess I'm confused because the drawing shows stairs going to a wall that has screen porch. So you're saying you'd like to remove the screen porch?
Yeah, after looking at it, I think it would look better and fit better there without a screen porch. I don't know what you think.
But just a porch.
Just open porch.
Yeah, just a standard porch.
Possibly, right. We'll talk about that. The front, it's obviously this was a plan that I feel like was just at the extra bedroom, the third bedroom was just added to. So I think the front elevation, while it has complexity with the 3 roof forms, I think that it needs to only have the major roof form at that center roof form, the middle one, isn't needed. I think you just extend the main roof form and let the addition of the bedroom at the front elevation punching out be the complexity change in the roof line, because you'll still have the overhang of your porch, but it's one less roof change. It kind of seems like a Russian doll stacking on itself right now, like it's just addition on addition, but this is a brand new building. So I'd like to see that change, because again, I know we'll see this project again today. The handrail, the porch would benefit from having handrails and guardrails on it, even if it isn't at the height, just for or at least a handrail. to ground it a little bit more, and the posts need to be called out. They're just 6x6 posts. They need to either be trimmed out or painted and not just left pressure treated. I think would make the project better as well.
Right.
And
I agree.
then you've got brick base called out, and I know that we've seen that comment from staff recommendation. If brick instead of parch coated stucco is proposed, which it is in those drawings, I want to see those materials locked in and actually installed, which would be a better project than what we typically see. So I'd love to see the brick base installed on this project.
Lizzie, can you go back to the context just to see the street again? Thanks.
I can show street view, but it's a pretty well built out block of Queen Anne, like 1 to 1.5 story Queen Anne cottages and some craftsman's and a little bit of infill construction. This has a infill house on it as well now.
Will you show the elevations again, please? I'm having trouble reading that front elevation. On the left side, that window seems to be cut off, yeah.
I think it's just cut off by the column.
Is it, okay.
I think it needs another 8 inches though, past the column almost. I think it's just a drawing error.
Okay.
It's a skinnier window.
Are there any further comments? Or do we have a motion?
There's no other comments. I'd like to make a motion to approve per staff recommendations with the addition that the center gable be absorbed into the main gable. So it'd be 2 gables rather than 3. The 6x6 posts are either trimmed or painted rather than left exposed as pressure treated, and that a handrail or guardrail is shown at the entry stair.
Lindsay, before there's a second, is there any need for the revisions to the screened-in porch going to an open-air porch to come back to you for staff approval for any reason?
I mean, ideally, those will be shown on the construction drawings submitted for permitting. You know, whatever is gonna actually be built, be accurate on the construction drawings, so if they don't need to come back to me, if the board doesn't think that element needs to come to staff for approval, then that can just be reviewed internally during permitting.
I think it would be, to add to it, would be to edit the rear elevation to show the porch that you'd like to have as the owner and return it for staff approval as a part of the motion.
Did you include the brick base in your motion?
I did not, but that's a good point. And also, materials are installed as shown in the drawing, but with the edits that were made by staff recommendation.
Feel confident with that?
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. We're going to move on now to 212 East Morelia Avenue. That's 3A25IH.
Okay, so this is a new duplex fronting East Morelia Avenue. It is the same design as the one we viewed on Apricot. I will speak a little bit more about the neighborhood context. The duplex is currently proposed to be set almost 55 feet from the front lot line as well. The parking here is 2 adjacent spaces that are accessed via the rear alley. So the house is proposed to be set almost 55 feet from the front property line. The average of the block face is 18.4 feet. The adjacent houses are at 20 and 22. So the house should be moved to the front to align with the front setback pattern of the block that meets both infill and the middle housing standards. The block to receive new construction, as you can see here on the street view, it's characterized by 1 or 1.5 story craftsman bungalows, Queen Anne cottages and infill. Most of them are 1.5 stories. There is a 6-unit apartment complex at the intersection with McMillan Street. The width is proportionate to the dimensions of the lot and the other houses on the block. It doesn't have as many details to incorporate with the context. It is a taller structure, so the 2-story is taller than the surrounding context. The block has 1 to 1.5 story houses. The duplex also features a 2-foot tall foundation that increases the overall height. The 6/12 pitch roof is kind of the minimum required by middle housing and infill housing. Just again, that large building kind of may also benefit from additional variations in roof line. The recommendation would also stand to better align the windows on the side elevation. We also, on this one, have some notes related to trees. There was a tree in the mature oak tree in the backyard that was recently cut down, and then the remaining mature maple tree in the front yard should be retained, if at all possible, with a new native or naturalized shade tree to be added to the rear yard. Those should be indicated on the site plan. So staff's recommending approval of 3A25AH, subject to the conditions that the site plan meets city engineering standards. The front setback be revised to align with the pattern of the block face. The incorporation of additional design elements to meet the middle housing standards. The site plan include a walkway to the street. It also include the mature tree in the front yard and a new one in the rear. Revision to the side elevation window placement. The side have the lap siding instead of the Dutch lap or flush panel, and then meeting the relevant standards of the zoning code.
Great, thank you, Lindsay. Josh, do you have any comments to add to Lindsay's?
No, it was good, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Then we'll go ahead and have more discussion.
Lindsay, you seemed, were you concerned about the height of this?
I think it's worth noting that, I mean, typically a duplex does call for that 2-story form. We've seen several of those on blocks with 1 or 1.5 stories. But I would just call out here that this block is relatively consistent in height of the existing houses being 1 to 1.5 stories. And this one's 2, so I just wanted to flag that for board discussion.
And how tall is the apartment building nearby?
I'll look at it on street view. I don't have a height measurement. It is one of those that's facing away from the street. It's usually one that we look at as like a bad example.
Slip that in there.
Well, it's like, I think it's actually in the design.
I think we say outlier.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's in the design guidelines. It's like-
Oh, there.
So it is a 2-story building. It probably will be relatively similar in height to this. It fronts McMillan,
Okay.
and it has that side kind of turned away. So
Gotcha.
we have
I
sort
know
of
where that is.
used that as an illustration in the guidelines.
There's,
Or the 1.5 stories.
I think in that same supposed to talk yet?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, I think in that same discussion, which I don't agree with I don't think we should be using a downspout to architecturally convey a townhouse separation between a duplex. I think that if the discussion is about the scale is large, yes, it'd be great to see it architecturally broken down, but I think that needs to be maybe a not a mirrored condition, but maybe a shifted condition where the stoops are obviously the right stoop would be shifted over, and then I know I'm not going to get into that, but I think that if we're talking about the height being too tall, then I think reiterating its modularity is actually the opposite. I think maybe that making it seem almost just like a single family, a single home rather than it split apart might be better for that context than trying to accentuate that much more that it's a duplex with the downspout down the middle. Again, I feel like making it just seem more congruent as a whole with having that central gable would be a better design for that project, and not slicing it apart with that horizontal seam. That's actually making it seem almost a bit taller, but could be more successful with the different base, middle, top materiality with the colors.
Would you have to use a downspout to split that up? Could you use something else? Could you maybe put a downspout first, something around it, and Because if form follows function, it's not a single-family house, it's a duplex, and so it
Right.
should look like a duplex.
But in the whole spirit of middle housing being like almost like stealth density, where you're including density within incognito of more of the typology around it. Though, I mean, to argue my own point, you do have 2 stoops, so there's always going to be the reading of two units there.
I like stealth density, that's good.
Best
For that.
architecture. I didn't coin that. That was a person in LA.
And I'm not, I wanted to understand the height context better, but looking down and seeing the 1.5 stories, it really, I'm comfortable with the height. That's what I personally am.
Well, one way you might address the height, which would be to go to a pyramidal roof, which many of the houses I've noticed in the neighborhood have, to where you don't have a gable end up on that tall part. It's roof all the way around and comes to a point. And that overall reduces the
Yeah, because that's not
feeling
the
of
it's just
height.
the attic.
Yeah.
I was looking at this section.
And
It also
there's,
solves the siding problem in that gable.
yeah, there's
What kind of problem?
The siding problem.
Yeah, and that takes out the siding change issue, and there's actually lots of available space in that attic as it's currently drawn. But if you went to the pyramidal roof, that would really address the mass and height, and as well as that gable differentiation issue.
Let's take the cedar and turn it vertically.
And put your downspout behind it.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say functionally, you need a downspout there either way, so.
Well, if it was that center gable, though, the downspouts would be on either end.
Right.
And not right down the middle as the bird finger.
Right.
Like, as I always think of whenever I see that, like that. I don't know, the reason I think this is it's good as for us to talk about is because we're starting to get more and more duplexes, and not one of them yet has, I think, really been spectacular. But I'm really glad to see duplexes coming instead of single-family homes. That's how our land use should be happening, is with density. So I'm just trying to, hopefully each project that comes before us, get it that much more down the field.
So are we saying that the hip roof fixes the height issue and the side gable issue, but that we would like to see a single center gable that dies into the front of the hip?
I mean, I didn't study it in my head with the pyramidal roof, so I can't combine them, but that is a potential, but not a motion.
Can we look at the
Just for
street
discussion.
view again? It seems to me that the height is just incompatible to me.
Yeah, because that apartment's got like a 412 or something.
That's the wall. Well, that little shotgun has its.
Yeah, I mean, it's just,
Looks like
it's the middle of the
that's in
block.
for construction.
It's a sweet little house.
These are all on a slightly elevated on a hill, also noted. So 1.5 stories.
Like I would think if it had other redeeming qualities that just knocked it out of the park, then the height would be like, okay, it's taller, and like the rest of it's still contextual. And like we do that all the time with projects where like, well, it's atypical in that way, but it's great in these other ways. But I don't think it's there yet, so I echo what Tony's saying.
I would almost rather it look like a single family 1.5 story house on the front, and then maybe have another dwelling unit off the back rather than having them side by side. Because I do like the density, and I'm glad that if you're proposing a duplex here, I think that's a great addition to the neighborhood. It just seems like the height of the frame elevation seems incompatible with the streetscape.
Never helps when we're reading it in elevation also, because the diminishing roof line looks so kind of,
Yeah.
3D is better, but then we only have axonometric 3D, so we're not really seeing it in an experiential perspective at all. But either way, I mean, it doesn't lie, that's the height of it.
Yeah, with the pyramid and real experience, you would see very little of the roof because it's going away from you in all directions, whereas you wouldn't, the gable is in plane.
Well, if you had that central gable in the front, that would be the primary view.
Yeah.
Everything else would recede from that.
Right.
And if you went to a single gable in the front, that would bring your height back. That's one of the advantages
back up too.
of the double gable in this context is that it lowers the overall front wall.
Mm-hmm. Just do a shed back to it.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, it'd be like a porch.
Can you go back to your staff recommendations?
So similar to the previous one, there were some additional site-related conditions on this one.
Do you like the shed idea, Cameron?
Yeah, that's an idea. It's just we always get into this. It's like at that point, are we? Yes. Shorter answer. Yes, I think that would be successful, but I don't know how that would interface with the hip roof.
The pyramid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Depending on the slope of that shed.
Right.
Lindsay, how many elements are they missing from the middle housing?
So the middle housing requires, in terms of, there's a section in the code that requires design elements, and the intent of the design elements is to have some things that make it compatible with the single family houses, but they're relatively small. So one of them is a porch or a stoop. It's got that. Things that people commonly use are, like we would say, have eave overhangs. The intent of these is to be relatively easy, so people can kind of just like pick up a couple of them.
Mm-hmm.
So typically people will show 12, at least minimum 12-inch eave overhangs. The other one that's easy for people to show is having window trim with projecting sills. And we don't really see that. I think that could be the intent here, and it does have a eave overhang called out, although that looks like a foot. So at least one, maybe two. And the other thing is that we can kind of vary from that. We can administratively vary from the code if it's considered a creative architectural design, which, it's up to the board to determine if that is what this is. Yes.
Lindsay, could you bring back up the street view for a second?
Josh, do you have an architect you're working with, or are these purchased offline?
I work with some engineers that draw these, not architects. Do you draw plans by chance?
Sometimes.
Why don't you draw me the duplex plan and I'll just use it on my next one? I'd love to do that.
Sounds pricey.
I'll add you to the queue. That sounds great.
It doesn't really work that way. But nice try.
The reason I was asking that, not facetiously, I was asking it for the fact that if we did have any postponement to make design revision, I didn't want you to be spinning your wheels with trying to understand what we were conveying. That's why I was asking the question.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and I hope you didn't take that the same way towards you. I really would allow you to draw my plan.
Well, I already did on my screen, but I'm not going to show that.
One of the things that I was wanting to kind of highlight with the street view, I think Lindsay's trying to pull it up.
It is pulled up. It's just
but with the foundation, if you look at the lot to the left, the house sort of the foundation cuts into the grade, and so I don't know that like steps will necessarily be required to go all the way up to the stoop. So visually, it might bring it down some.
Because of the site slope.
Because of the slight slope that I don't think is necessarily reflected in the drawings.
Okay.
Sorry.
So if you look at the house on the left of the lot, you can kind of see a little bit.
Oh, yeah, that falls away topography.
Yeah.
Yeah, that might help some. It doesn't help that there's a shotgun house right next to it. The smallest it could be, yeah.
think the context is hard.
Yeah.
I noticed the other porches are shed though, where like, they're talking about converting the little twin gable into a shed would sort of make the middle protrusion look more like a box bay.
Mm-hmm.
Be cheaper to build.
My worry would be that it would start to look like a box with a box in the front.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
a whole lot of
Yes.
articulation.
It looks like a big bay, yeah, which might be the wrong thing. Okay, well, let's need to get a direction.
Is anybody in opposition to this, spoken out against it? Should we know?
We have not received comment, and I haven't received neighborhood input from Oakwood Lincoln Park in a long time. We post public notice signs in the yard. We can try to better engage the neighborhood for that, but I have not.
They must have had a change of leadership.
Yeah.
I'm inclined to make a motion, and that is based upon the lack of context to approve this according to staff approval.
Because of lack of context.
I would be willing to add the comments that were made earlier about, in the first iteration of this, about breaking up the horizontal massing the way it presents. And I'm not sure how that language was in the first one.
So if you're interested in what that was, it was studying differentiation in the end gable or side gable sidings via color or material differentiation submitted for staff for approval, and that would, that could and/or include the removal of these cedar strips.
So in addition to what staff has recommended, I would like to add that to my motion.
So you're motioning that we're okay with the height?
Yes, that's what I'm making my motion and based upon, and I'm doing that because of the lack of context on the street.
Okay, we have a motion that includes the amendments from the previous design like this. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No. I don't know. What do you say there?
And Lindsay, we show that street view again, please?
Okay.
So that was.
Do you want to do a?
4 yes, 1 no, and I didn't hear Cameron say anything, so.
Let's go,
I'm gonna say no as well.
Okay. So 4 yes, 2 no.
Back to the lot.
sorry.
Oh, and you, I'm sorry, I didn't catch you.
Yes.
Yes, okay. 5 yes, 2 no, sorry.
So I might be reaching for straws here. That big tree might help with the context. It's gonna take up a lot of the elevation.
And that, one of the conditions of approval would be include that, the final site plan include that existing mature tree in the front yard.
Yeah.
Preserve that if at all possible. There's not a need for there won't be a new driveway curb cut or anything there.
I just don't understand the statement, lack of context. Are you saying the lack of consistent context?
Yes.
Okay, because there's a
There's
apartment in the
no
middle.
single narrative.
It's all mixed up already.
So having tiny to mid-size to large is just showing variation.
I'm not
throughout
seeing
the
it as large. I'm definitely seeing it
Bigger.
larger,
Yeah.
but I'm not seeing it as large.
There was some bigger stuff on the other end of the street.
And across the street.
I think that elevation is also really misleading.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not arguing that comment. I still think that the design of the elevation of the outside is not great. That's the reason why I don't want to approve it, but I completely agree with you on the lack of context, that it would just too thin there as another size.
I would not disagree with you on that side.
Okay, so we did have a motion and a second, and we did vote 5-2. The
Yep.
motion carries.
All right.
All right, thank you. Next up is 430 East Oldham Avenue. That's 3B25IH.
Okay, this is a new primary structure on East Oldham, and it's 32 feet wide by 40 feet deep. It's proposed to be set 27 feet from the front property line. The parking was initially proposed as a concrete parking pad in the front of the house. The applicant has submitted already some revisions in response to the staff recommendation. So you can see the house here. It has a front gable roof, a partial hipped roof on the right. There's a partial width, 8-foot deep front porch recessed under the front gable roof. And so it's extending out here. You can see the column and the column. So the average front setback of the block is 20 feet. The adjacent houses, well, this is a church that's at 7 feet and 9 feet. So the house should be moved towards the front property line to align with the block face. There are some slope conditions here, and there's a retaining wall here. So we would hope to keep that open for staff review, so the applicant has the opportunity to kind of revise that based on site conditions. The final site plan should include a walkway from the porch to the street, which the applicant did make those revisions as well. In terms of the parking, again, this is a revision submitted by the applicant. The guidelines recommend that alleys or new driveways go at least 20 feet behind the front facade of the infill house. So with access limited to one lane, so the staff recommendation there would still be to extend that somewhat so parking can be behind the front house. The porch, the window and door patterns, the roof line, and the materials all meet the design guidelines. So staff is recommending approval of 3B 25H subject to the conditions that the house align with the front setback pattern of the block face, include a walkway to the sidewalk and meet city engineering standards. The parking be revised to meet guidelines. The final construction just retain these general architectural details shown in the drawing, and then the site plan include a native or naturalized shade tree in the front and rear yards.
Okay, is this Josh's as well? Yeah. Okay. Is the applicant present?
I am, yes.
Can you give us your name and address, please?
Chad Taylor, 11409 Municipal Center Drive, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37933.
Thank you. Do you have anything to add to Lindsay's comments?
I do not.
Great, thank you. We'll open it up to conversation.
I had a question. The right side elevation shows a door at the back, but the floor plan doesn't show the door. Is that a mistake on the right side elevation?
It is. That door has been removed.
Okay, yeah, because there's a bathroom behind it. Okay. On the front columns, is there information on how those are detailed? Is some pictures they kind of look like they're trying to be like Neo-Greek, and some they just look like they're trimmed out square columns. What are you proposing for the columns on the front?
Either right square with 6-inch trim at the top and bottom.
Okay, cool. Does it have material called out for the base? Or does it just say CMU, which I think that's called out in the staff recommendation, isn't it? To be parch coated?
That one is not in there, so if you could include, that would be helpful to include.
Good, okay, so base. Aside from the base just being exposed block and us trying to add something to that, I was surprised to read the material list, and I mean to the staff recommendation to be built per the details. You've got a mahogany front door. Is that a actually solid mahogany front door you're proposing?
Yes.
Great. And then Impervia fiberglass windows from Pella. That's also better than what we're seeing normally. So it's a good thing. It's a positive note. So I'm going to get right to it and motion to accept for staff recommendation, but also adding that the CMU base is either clad in brick or parch coated.
There is one thing, Cameron, I think maybe we should look at.
Okay.
Lindsay, if you pull up could you pull up the street view? So if you, on the street view, you can see the house that's to the left and then the church to the right. Both of them seem to have basements.
The height.
So the height of the foundation, I don't believe it's representative in the drawings that we have.
Okay.
So I would be curious to know how that's going to be tackled.
Yeah, it wouldn't really affect the front elevation, but as it goes back down the site, there's a drop.
Right. So is that going to be a big crawl space, or is it?
Right.
What is it? Yeah.
And if that's a stucco or brick.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of really I mean, granted, you have structures on both left and right of the house, so what you're seeing from the street is probably minimal, but I do think that it impacts the foundation definitely will appear differently than it does in the drawings.
Yeah, and the deck will have a lot of stairs.
Yeah, and there's, the deck on the back.
How are you gonna address the change in elevation as the house moves back?
Essentially would just be a larger crawl. I can do brick or I can barge it, and then it would just be stairs off the back door. With a door on the bottom, the door on the rear of the crawl space to enter.
Right.
Okay, so we have a motion hanging out there. Can we clean that up a little bit?
I mean, I think it's a really good point that Jared made. I think that it would be, if the applicant's amenable to it, I heard him say he could brick veneer, or, I mean, I don't want to hold him to the brick veneer. It's either brick veneer or parge coated, so I think the motion stands as I stated it, unless anybody has amendments to it.
Okay.
I'll second.
I do have a question though on the brick. Is it required? Is a brick ledge acceptable in this area?
Is a what acceptable?
Yeah, so he was talking about if he chooses to use brick, he was talking about how sometimes the contemporary brick foundations are built somewhat out from the siding. Mr. Taylor's had a similar project in 4th and Gill in the historic overlay where
They didn't like that.
no. So
They wanted the upper material to be proud of it.
Yeah, our design guidelines don't have anything related to that.
Yeah.
So infills don't speak to that at all.
That's right, okay.
So yes, that's allowed.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, thank you.
Thank you all.
They tell him to do, are they gonna make him fur out his walls to like get past it?
He used thin brick and the siding.
Thin brick? Historic zoning. Dick.
Those guys are difficult.
What? I'm sorry.
Sticky.
No, what's the question? What's the question?
They were talking about brick foundations and how it interacts with the siding and
I said how to get it
this
up.
applicant's new house on Deary Street. So.
First time I was never paying attention and you asked me something.
All right, next up we have 2823 Johnston Street, which is 3C25IH.
Okay, this is a new primary structure on Johnston Street. It's a 2-story residence. So I'll go ahead and show you the residence. It's a 2-story residence with an exterior of a board and batten siding, a 12 over 12 pitch roof. The house is 19 feet wide, and it'll be set 15 feet from the front lot line. We can see the window placement on the side and front elevations here, and the various siding elements on the front as well, and I can run through those with the findings. And the parking is a concrete parking pad that's behind the house and accessed via Delaware, which is a side street. So I have the aerials pulled up here. So this is an extremely small lot. It's 30 feet wide, and this is the building that covered the lot previously took up almost all of the lot. It's since been demolished. The adjacent house is set 24 feet from the front property line. A recently approved new construction at 2815 Johnston, which is just on the other side of this, will be 27 feet from the front property line. So the house should be recessed towards the rear to align with the block. A specific measurement can be approved by staff. There is a walkway from the porch to the sidewalk. So the block to receive new construction has Queen Anne cottages, craftsman's, similar to the previous. This is a 19-foot wide house, so it is smaller in width than some of the other houses on the block. However, this lot is only 30 feet wide. The previous building that was here was relatively similar, although it did just kind of cover the whole lot there. The house doesn't meet the RN2 corner side setback, which would be 12 feet from Delaware. The design review board has the ability to kind of offer that variance for them, so they don't need to go back to the BZA, provided it's in line with the design guidelines. The guidelines say that setbacks could differ from those required by the base zoning district to realize the principles associated with the guidelines. And it says on corner lots, side yard setback should be handled traditionally, that is closer to the side street. So in the opinion of staff, it does meet that. The board should discuss the width of the house and that side setback. The parking does meet the design guidelines in that it is at the rear of the house. There's not an alley right here on this block. The house is significantly taller than the context, and it does not align architecturally with other narrow houses in the neighborhood. Those are usually have a lot less complex facades. They usually are just only 1 or 2 bays. This house is 30 feet 4 inches tall, but that is measuring to the roof height. The city would measure to this midpoint of the roof gable, but house is relatively tall. It has a front porch recessed under a shed roof. You can see that here, supported by a brick column. And so it is proportionate in width to the house. It should be deeper. A different support should be used. The front door style is appropriate. However, the front door faces the side elevation instead of the facade, so that front door should be revised in placement. And the windows are different from the context. There are 8 different window styles, most of which are fixed and single pane. Surrounding houses typically have a single or double hung. The facade has a solid ratio or a solid kind of transparency, but the side elevations do not. The 12/12 does meet the guidelines. It is steeper than the context. It makes the house pretty tall. And then in terms of the materials and the findings, there are a significant amount of materials. The roof would be appropriate. The primary siding is a board and batten with a darker board and batten. The applicant had offered some notes about the brick being a dark board and batten. It is vertical siding is typically not a primary siding material. It's used as an accent. So the board should just discuss the height and scale of the house in the neighborhood context if that's determined to be appropriate. We've got 9 conditions here listed related to the site plan, the front setback, the porch depth, the window changes, the front door placement, and the construction details, the slab or block foundation. So there's materials again, and then the primary siding material revised to lap. And I can run through those as we discuss as well.
Okay, thank you.
No.
Is the applicant present? No. Oh dear, okay. Do we want to have a discussion without the applicant here?
Only if we're gonna give them some advice.
I'll make a motion to postpone.
Okay.
But the advice part, I think, is helpful, like in addition to the recommendations, you mean, Matthew?
Yeah, I mean, the height.
Yeah.
We can go ahead and give him input on the height so that when we do,
The-
I'll second the motion to postpone. But then like during this discussion, I think let's give him some feedback on the height and then the verticals we were talking about.
In the setback.
There were a lot of conditions on there, a lot of information that we just don't have. I'd like them to come back and
Yep.
present most of that to us.
This reminds me of King Ludwig's castle. It's, and how to approach a folly if someone wants to build something totally peculiar that later becomes an icon in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
This thing is so narrow and tall and pointy. It's almost like Rapunzel's tower. We're just
Do you have a street view?
I live next door to a house like that.
I would say though, like in this spirit of like infill housing, like this is what's starting to happen. Like reviewed 2, almost 3 projects today that were just on obscure leftover lots, and that's where we're getting to, or like the remnant lots. And I just went to a lecture at lunch with an architect out of Philadelphia who is doing these super skinny housing moments in downtown Philadelphia. And this isn't the case, that's not the context, but like if I was given that could be like something as opportunity, like awesome is that? Like,
Yeah.
I'd love to see this project be successful because then like the historic typology of the Camelback shotgun house, that's how they got narrow housing on infill lots with a little bit of height to it. There's precedent to that. I don't know if there's a Camelback shotgun in the traditional neighborhood residential, but this project could be a version of that and could be pretty great.
Over here.
I don't know about the corner, the 12 feet offset's gonna ruin the lot though. You can't, the corner.
A 30-foot lot.
Yeah, you couldn't do anything with it at that point. Yeah, I love shotgun houses, but they've got some that have like a hump on the back. That's how they got the low street frontage and then height in the, but this one's on a corner, so then that would also look kind of odd on the corner.
I think it's a unique site that could have height on it.
Right.
Personally, I think, like you said, it's a leftover lot. It's a very strange small lot. So there's already a lot of things going against it. There's commercial spaces on the other corners. There's an empty lot across that could be commercial as well. Could be a nice little node in the neighborhood.
Could it potentially be 1.5, 2?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was one of my questions. I was gonna say, why 2? Why not a 1.5 instead, just to get it down a little bit? The vertical siding's not helping the height reading either. It's just making it look like a funny house.
Well, I mean, do we not like the height just because there's not a lot of height around? I think it,
I
to
don't
Perry's
know.
point, it's just an unusual place.
Yeah.
And in an unusual spot, so that might be okay.
I don't think it's the height in the context. I think it's the height with all the materials. You got
Yeah.
10 pounds of material in a 5-pound bag.
Yeah. I
So,
agree with that.
And that left elevation is actually the street front on
yeah.
Delaware, so it needs something going on besides the side of a barn. We need a red pouch chewing tobacco sign.
No, Sea-Rock City.
Well, it looks like underneath that gable, that should be differentiated as like a little tower element to match the front.
Yeah.
It would help for sure.
What I'd like to know more is where do these come from? Where do these start? That's why I asked a lot.
Yes.
The internet.
The internet.
I mean, like this.
Engineers.
House
Some
plans.
engineers.
It's apparently.
House plans.
That's why they're designed so
Looks like it's
crappy.
Literally that simple. .com.
I think there's a note on the plan that's Oklahoma.
I came from Oklahoma.
That's what it says.
Oklahoma's got some good things going on though. I don't
So
know.
Jesse, it looks like the applicant has just shown up.
Okay.
We do have a motion on the floor, so if you guys want to give him some suggestions. Hey Jesse, you're able to unmute yourself if you'd like.
Yeah, can you see me and hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Can
Yes, ma'am?
you give your name and address, please?
Yeah, I am Jesse Alifon with 4124 Oakland Drive,
Okay.
Knoxville, Tennessee.
So Jesse, we had a quick run through of the staff recommendations, and there is a motion to postpone for you on the table, and I'll let the board members speak a little bit. We had some concerns about height, about materials, and about transparency on the sides.
Okay.
So yeah, just kind of rehash what we were saying. I mean, we're glad to see a project go in an obscure lot, so we understand the constraints and why it's skinny and those sort of things. But we're trying to understand the height and just all the different materiality and those sort of things. So that's what we've been discussing.
Gotcha.
I think it's
Is
a
there
really.
some concerns that you guys are,
So Jesse, did you read the staff report?
was that in my email or where is that at?
It was in your email.
Give me 1 second.
It's okay. It is significantly long. I think just to,
Okay.
we did kind of run through it already, and the gist was there a lot of the items that would need to be revised are kind of listed out here in 1 through 9. And I'm happy to talk to you about them later too.
Okay.
But they kind of relate to the porch at least the porch design, the window design and placement, the materials, having the front door face the street. I said materials, and then was there anything else from our discussion? From the discussion?
Well, we were talking about the siding being so vertical on an already very vertical design, and that you might want to consider breaking that up some.
Yeah, this site, I mean, it looks like it has 3 front facades in a way.
Yeah.
The back is not really a back facade since it's proud of the street face. And so there needs to be a lot more attention given to those facades. They need to be cleaned up. The vertical siding being one of them. I think giving more prominence to the corner could help out if you wanted to add an element to break up that left elevation. Could be like a cross gable look, like a tower, or I personally am okay with the height, but I don't know if that's open for discussion among the board. Just given that it is such a strange site, I would be willing to make concessions with the setbacks if the height were able to come down some, because there's no way around the three elevations that are going to be viewed from the street. So I think pushing it in a few feet is not really going to do much.
I had a question though, is the 12 feet of a sightline moment at a corner for like traffic? Is it an engineering comment or is it a design guideline?
It's a requirement of the RN2 base zoning.
Okay, so it's not like safety, like someone's gonna, it's not an intersection safety moment for engineering, okay. For cars.
Do you feel comfortable with that, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was formulated to be a sightline thing.
Okay.
But of course, you guys have the purview to decrease that.
But it's not like, we're not gonna be like allowing cars to hit each other because we put the, it's a sightline like a pedestrian walking. That's what because I know there's always like the vision cone we have to do, like our commercial projects.
There's a 4-way intersection there, so I think traffic would be slow enough at that intersection that it shouldn't be a concern.
Routinely, traffic wants a 15-foot triangle at your corners there, which this comes close to.
Got it, yeah, because it has the relief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think another comment would be to like, I think there was a comment on the, or a note on the roof that it says to be determined by contractors, so like actually calling out the materials you're proposing. Because right now the roof almost looks like a standing seam metal roof in the elevation drawings. So if that's what you're proposing, it just needs to be noted as such.
Gotcha, okay. I think we plan on doing shingles on that, but do you need me to have my designer redesign, like with the elements on there, or do you need me to just note it on there?
No, I think with all the staff comments, it'll be a redesign.
Yeah. And go into a horizontal siding primarily of board and batten is okay for accents, or to distinguish, as was said earlier, an element to break up this left elevation perhaps or something. But the primary siding, especially considering the height issues, I think should be a horizontal. And I think you noted that it's not using the brick on the front, but that would just be a different tone of siding material.
Yeah, so I'll have to have my designer redo most of it, but the sides, I do plan on doing horizontal siding on the sides. And then for the front facade, I'm thinking about doing, where the brick is right now, doing like a black or dark color board and batten. And then that smaller piece on the right would still be horizontal, and then the left piece, the bigger piece, would be board and batten as well. Would it be of the lighter board and batten?
When you resubmit it, just show those orientations of the fenestration or the siding, and also we don't review colors, but we do want to know the size and scale of and the direction of the siding.
And then getting the front door to face the street.
Okay.
And Jesse,
Is the siding? Yeah, go ahead.
I'll talk you through all of these. We'll follow up with you.
Okay.
So you don't have to, yeah.
I did have a question for the back though. Is the back okay, or do you want that to be horizontal siding as well?
It needs to be consistent with what's happening on the faces that are adjacent to it. So it shouldn't be its own thing.
If you wanted the gables to be board and batten and the body to be horizontal, that would be used as an accent material.
Yeah, it needs to be an accent, not a primary material.
Gotcha, okay.
And just for future reference, it's makes it much easier if what you intend to do is represented in the package and on the screen so that we're reviewing what's actually gonna be there. So it's hard to imagine just verbally what you're talking about.
I gotcha. This is the first time I've been to this process, so I'm learning a lot as I go through it.
Yeah.
Great, well, thank you.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Do we
It's a
want-
really interesting project, and I think we all agree
Yes.
that we're glad that it's happening.
Do we
Just
want
needs
more
some
windows on the left elevation?
Yeah, I was gonna mention that
Yeah.
before you got on the call, we were talking about that left elevation that's also a really primary elevation because it's on the street, since this is a corner lot. And so we'd like to see more variation on that side, and I suggested making the area underneath the gable, a more of a tower element to kind of match the front and the back. You know, that's not a requirement, but something to consider.
Is that the left?
Gotcha.
No, the left.
You're talking about the side with the gable on it, right?
Yeah, this side that has the 3 little windows in a row, like carrying that
Right is the street side.
Yeah, I've got that.
volume down to the ground underneath the
Yeah,
gable.
I had that backwards. The left is the one that faces the shotgun next door.
Yeah, so, but it's still,
Oh.
The right is the one that's on
right,
Delaware.
there's the,
Yes,
Okay.
The staff recommendation is to include windows on both.
I read that backwards.
Okay, okay.
And, yeah, front, right, left. Yes.
Gotcha, okay. All right, so we have an active motion and second to postpone. Can we dissolve that somehow if we want to, or do we want to?
Go ahead and postpone it so you can resubmit with the changes.
Yeah.
That's the motion.
Yeah.
That's the motion?
Yeah.
Okay,
I think that's enough.
so we have a motion to postpone and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries.
Okay, and Jesse, we'll follow up with you after to make sure we're on the same page, okay?
Okay, sounds good. I have a question as well.
Can we let somebody have fun? Just,
To continue with the permit, do I need to finish this, or can I go ahead and
You need to
continue with
finish
the permit?
this. Yeah, you'll need
I need to finish this first?
Yeah, because your
Okay.
permit needs to reflect what you're gonna build.
Gotcha, okay, I gotcha.
Thank you. One more.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, the last one is 342 Chickamauga Avenue, case number 3D25IH.
Okay, this is the same one. And so I'm not gonna run through these too many, I'll just keep what's specific to this application. The parking on this one is proposed as a, concrete driveway in the front of the house. And it is accessed via Chickamauga Avenue. And it is the same design as we'd seen previously. The front setback should be moved to the front property line to align with the setback pattern of the street. It's proposed at 30.5 when the average is 25.1. The house is proportionate. The block to receive new construction has craftsman's, Queen Anne cottages, minimal traditionals, and some new construction kind of ranch houses. This house is proportionate to the lot in width. The parking should be revised to meet the infill housing design guidelines to extend beside the house. Overall, the facade width and the porch, the windows and door proportions meet the design guidelines that all elevations should use that same material. So the staff recommendation here is similar to the previous. The parking be revised to meet the design guidelines with the site plan meeting engineering standards. Window be added to the rear elevation. The final site plan include the walkway and then the trees in the front and the rear yards, and the elevations use that same siding material.
Thank you. Is our applicant still here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Great, thank you. Do you have anything to add?
No, she did good, thank you.
Then we'll open it up for discussion.
is there no alley
There is
access
not
there?
an alley.
Okay,
there isn't.
There is not.
yeah, it's not accessible.
Yeah.
I'll say since I have the chance to, I live close to this, and the detriment to Chickamauga is that
This one
they're,
does have an alley.
right.
I thought it had a serviceable
Okay, you
alley.
guys can change that recommendation then.
Well, to
But
add
there's
to
also
that,
curb cut.
you can't walk Chickamauga because if you get to the west end of Sharps Ridge and come off the trail, which I do often, and try to walk back to my house, the sidewalk's just gone because of all the driveways coming into it. It's just either people park on the driveway or the sidewalk, or they have a curb cut going through it. So I'd love to start to systematically, slowly change that. I mean, that house burnt down. I'm pretty sure that's that little white house that we see intact, caught on fire. So this is a chance to make it right with the new construction to exit from the rear,
Yes.
access from the rear.
Be sure and include that in the conditions.
Cameron, I liked your recommendation earlier about getting rid of that middle gable as well.
Right.
And just looking at that aerial view, that seems much more in line with what's already happening in
Right.
the neighborhood.
Yep.
Same design comments as before.
Yeah, I need to remember what they all were.
We can tell you what they are.
And add the driveway off the alley.
There's a lot of grade change on this one too.
Bring that up. I think.
Cameron, do you want to hear your conditions?
Just this, I think Tony also had something about he wanted to bring up the grade change as well.
I know we did a lot near here where getting off the alley was difficult because of grade,
Uh-huh.
but I don't know if it's this block. Can you bring up the topo, Nancy?
Not bad.
Really, not much.
What are we doing here, 342?
Mm-hmm.
It looks
That's pretty
doable.
fun.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just the cut. It looked more on their side.
Okay.
It's a long house.
Yeah. So it might mean that porch has a lot of steps.
On the back.
Yeah, the back though. Okay. To your question, Lindsay, yeah, if you could reread those from the other project.
Those were omitting the central gable, kind of aligning the 3 gables into 2 front gables on the facade. The 6x6 posts be trimmed out and/or painted, trimmed and painted, including a handrail or guardrail on the front porch. And then there are edits to the rear elevation as the applicant desires to show that proposed porch for staff approval. And then finally, after discussion about the brick, it would just be matching the material elements. It should be as shown in the drawings.
All right.
So that's-
Are we allowed to motion with that?
That's 5 extra conditions.
Okay. So, and you all can add to it. I'd like to make a motion to approve per staff recommendations plus the 5 conditions that Lindsay just stated. If I don't think I have to restate them.
You could say from the 5 extra conditions from 2I25A IH, referencing that case would be helpful.
Right, with the 2 extra, with the 5 extra additions from project 2I25IH, as well as revising parking entry from the alley, driveway entry from the alley.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I don't think we have any other business, so we will adjourn.